Okay, Tanakwe Tenakauto, and welcome. My name is Lisa Smith, and I am a children's continence nurse. I've been one for over 20 years, but along with that, I have also been a parent to a child who was diagnosed with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder around the age of 6, but we didn't actually know how severe his disability was until we got the full neurological assessment done when he was 11 years of age. So I will just share my slide, and I'm doing this. Let's just put it up here. I'm doing this because September is FASD Awareness Month, which is important for all of us to recognise through worldwide. As I say, what I'm going to talk about today is FASD and the 4 B's and E. So the 4 B's is really brain, bowels, bladder, and behaviour. And around that is obviously the environment that the child is exposed to that can all have an impact. And yeah, you'll soon find out as I go through this talk what things can actually impact on the child's bowels and bladder, which then in turn has an impact on their overall well-being and being able to function. So yeah, and I'm just going to talk about this picture really. This is my boy, Aaron. And he was 11 years old then. He was quite a small boy. And he loved the Scouts. But there was always stress going away for weekends without support from mum, obviously. But we had awesome Scout leaders. And one of the tasks that they had to do was they had to pack their rucksack and then carry it 2 kilometers down this path. And, Aaron likes to, be able to do what everybody else is doing. So he packed up his rucksack, put it on his back, and the next thing he fell back, okay, like a tortoise with his feet in the air. And he was quite upset, and the other kids were kind of sniggering and trying not to laugh. But the Scout leaders put a branch through the top of his rucksack so that he can achieve the task. So they didn't do it for him. They accommodated, they found a way to help him to be able to achieve that task, okay? And really, when we look at FASD, it is about putting an invisible wheelchair with really good structure, solid, stable structure around them that is got to be lifelong, just like a person who's got quadriplegia and needs a good wheelchair for support. So do our children, but it's a different type of support, and that support needs to be informed adults, informed people that actually understand the physical brain damage of FASD. Now, on this weekend, there were some accidents because he was out of his usual environment. he was out of his usual routine. And the Scout leaders were aware of that and were able to manage it and support him without making a big deal or for any of the other kids to actually know. And as I say, he looked, as you can see, he looks entirely normal, and you know, at least 90% of our kids look entirely normal. But he had an IQ of 52, but that was only really one part of his executive functioning deficits. So yeah, as I say, we do need to, you know, our kids might be continent in one environment, but that may all go out the window when they're put under stress and in another environment, even though it's a happy change. Like he was dead excited about going camping, you know, with the Scouts. So that's just, you know, a little story about, you know, my son. So we'll just get on to some facts. A little bit about, you know, bowel and bladder 101. You don't know what's abnormal until you know what normal is. So I'm going to just quickly discuss that with you. And then just some of my essential top toilet tips for healthy bowels and bladder. So these are the facts, all right? 1 in 20 children between the ages of 5 to 14 have a significant form of disability, whether that be physical, mental, behavioural, learning. You know, there are so many facets to what does disability actually mean. And it's no surprise that continence problems are much higher in children with additional needs. And this was a study that was carried out on just over 100 children around 9 years of age who had a mixture of disabilities. And most of us would expect our kids to be continent by the age of 5. So these kids were 9, and only, you know, 40% of children were actually continent. And what was even more surprising is that very few of them had adequate fluid intake. And fluid intake is essential for healthy bowels and bladder. And I'll talk about that later on. And one of the biggies, as I call it, is constipation. And it is a very common problem. It can become chronic if the child has had this issue for over 4 months. But it's also complex and sneaky because children could have poos, you know, bowel motions every day, but they're not completely emptying their bowel. And over time, they can still become constipated. So that is confusing for a lot of parents, you know, because I have them say, no. There's no way they could be constipated. And then when I assess a bit further, they actually are, okay? And children that have disabilities, particularly sensory and logical neurodiversity, neurobehavioral, they often don't get that same recognition and sensation of the signs and symptoms of constipation, which most of us will know is that it's pain and straining through defecation when we're trying to empty our bowels. And the stools tend to be much harder, they might be a bit bigger, and your frequency often changes where, you know, you might be reduced to maybe once or twice a week, okay? So the other thing that you know, the studies and journals that I have read is the lower the IQ, the higher the rate of constipation. But it's also about the executive functioning. The lower the overall executive functioning, and we know that FASD affects all 10 domains of executive functioning, and they can be highly dysregulated, then that is going to have a huge impact, okay? And it is a significant issue with serious complications if it's not treated, okay, physically and psychologically. As well as affecting the brain, prenatal alcohol exposure affects the gut, okay? And there's a lot of work getting done on these microbiomes and that lovely environment that is important for a nice, healthy gut, okay? And they have a huge role in digestion and in the immune system, okay? And also in the development of inflammatory disorders of the body. And yeah, that there doesn't tend to be, you know, that the amount of gut bacteria is actually impaired in individuals with prenatal alcohol exposure. And really here is just, it's quite a busy slide. But next to the brain, the bowel is the second brain. And you just need to look at on Google, there's information all about the gut-brain axis, and they have to work in harmony together. So if there is something wrong with the bowel, then in turn, it is going to have an impact on the brain. And in all my work with children who have had bowel and bladder problems, you know, at least 40% of kids, it really has problems that their behavior is difficult. But once you sort their bowels out, particularly their bowels, their behavior can significantly improve, okay? And it's all, as I say, it's all to do with the microbiomes, but it's also to do with the neurotransmitters and the amount of some of the hormones that are circulating around our body. And many, again, of our kids do have high levels of the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. That's what they often survive on, because they are struggling to manage the environment around them. And this is Charles Renacci, and this is research that he's done. Again, a lot of the research on FASD is done in Canada. And he's beginning to realise the impact of the gut on children's mental health, okay? And that by improving gut health, it could possibly reduce some of the mental health problems that are part of the, that's under the umbrella of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So this is my 4 Bs sort of model, okay, of managing bowel and bladder problems in all our children. So, if there's an imbalance in one area, then it can have a huge impact on the other area. And we all know that the FASD brain has a huge impact on the child's behavior, but it can also have an impact on their bowel function too. And, you know, busy brain, busy child, okay, no time to drink, no time to go to the toilet, they hold on or they rush the whole process, and that all leads to issues with their bowels and bladder. What issues? Well, one, if they're not emptying their bladder properly and they're not drinking enough, concentrated urine and incomplete emptying leads to urinary tract infections and bladder leakage, overactive bladder where they're going to the toilet constantly. Okay, not emptying their bowels properly, they're going to land up having what we call fecal impaction with overflow soiling, which looks like diarrhea. And again, it might, again, a lot of people might just attribute it to their behaviours associated with their disability rather than actually looking a bit further, because they don't present with some of the other symptoms like tummy pain. You know, they may not express verbally that they are struggling and they have pain when they're trying to do a poop. But often, in many cases, it's their behaviour becomes more dysregulated the longer the problem goes on. So I think we don't, you know, and I say this to everybody, don't assume that the child's behaviour is just because they've got physical brain damage due to FASD or, you know, because of the behaviours. Look at physiological etiology. Do, you know, is this having an impact? Okay, do we have problems that we need to sort out? Which would then in turn improve their behaviour and help regulate their brain a bit more. Okay, so this is really just a very quick guide about, you know, the digestive tract. Okay, so it's called, I call it the food to poop tube, and it's a bit like a conveyor belt. And so the food goes in and it's all processed in the small bowel where all the good stuff from the food that we eat is used to fuel our body. Okay, the rubbish that is left over becomes poop. Okay, and it will work its way through the large bowel and down the descending colon into the sigmoid and into the rectum. Healthy digestion, healthy bowel transit time, you know, if what we eat and it's all sorted out through the conveyor belt, that it should take only 24 hours. And a good test to identify, have we got an issue here, is to eat sweet corn, because we don't absorb the kernels in the sweet corn. And so we see the yellow specks in their stool. Now, most of this digestive system we've got no control over. It just works automatically. And it works automatically under the control of what we call, they should call it the automatic, okay, nervous system, but they call it the autonomic nervous system. The only part that we have control over, because we need to have control over it, and they need to hold on until we can find a toilet in order to be able to then empty. So the only part that we have control over is the external anal sphincter, okay? And that can cause a lot of problems in individuals that have brain damage, that you know, the brain can inhibit and stop the anal sphincter from opening. All right. The other thing to remember, particularly with our busy brain kids, is that, this is the norm is that most of us will empty our bowels. It's a normal process 20 minutes after we've had a meal. So that is quite a good time to really do that prompting with your child who's got this busy FASD brain, okay, is that they need, toilet timer, okay, after breakfast and after a meal. If your child is really, dysregulated and is not recognizing the signals of needing to empty their bowels. So a healthy bowel, okay, and I think this is important, is that they're not going to be able to tell you half the time, okay, because life is just too busy and they've got a poor short-term memory. So caregivers actually do have to check, and you do have to know their business, because prevention is far better than treatment, okay, when they get into that cycle of stool withholding and then passing hard, painful poo, and then holding on, and then it just becomes significantly worse. It's hard to break habits with these kids once they've got them established. So it's better not to get these habits in the first place, okay? So healthy bowels. Most of us should be passing a nice type 4 to 5 stool, okay, every single day, okay, up to 3 times a day or 3 times a week. So roughly, every day, if not every second day, is a good rule. And it should be easy to pass. You shouldn't be sitting for ages on the toilet. And it should not be overly offensive. And light brown, not dark brown and sticky and hard, which I sometimes see in the pictures that parents show me. So this is just really what unhealthy bowels may come across. But a lot of kids don't often say that it hurts, okay? They often don't say very much at all, really, okay? So really it is about knowing what your child is passing in the toilet. Putting toilet paper in the pan first so that it doesn't disappear down the arm of the toilet, okay? Other signs and symptoms, okay, which again could be associated with FASD, okay? They might have regular tummy pain. Well, sometimes we think that's because they're just really anxious and stressed. Lethargy, okay? That they're maybe really trying their hard all morning at school, and then they're just zonked by the afternoon because they've really worked hard at keeping their brain in gear. Poor appetite, okay? Fussy appetite, poor concentration, poor sleep. These are all things that not quite obvious, Increased behaviours, particularly aggression, lashing out, really huge mood swings, self-harming, impulsivity. These are all things that if they have got problems with their bowels, can actually, impact on their behaviour. So remember that, okay? That is something to keep in mind, and know what your business is as well, okay? Because 1 in 4 people have issues with their bowels, okay? Healthy bladder. How often should we be emptying our bladder? How often should our kids be emptying our bladder, okay? And just like the bowel, that's a muscle, the bladder is a muscle too. So it needs to work to its best, so we don't have issues. How do we get that bladder working to its full potential? Okay, well, it is water. So, they need to be drinking plenty of water so that the bladder stretches fully. And if it stretches fully, it will then squeeze the urine out fully. Okay, if we don't have a strong bowel muscle, bladder muscle, then it might not squeeze all the urine out fully. And then over time, that can lead to a twitchy bladder. Okay, so we've got to work these, we've got to make sure that the bladder is allowed to fill and empty at appropriate times throughout the day. So for our littlies, preschoolers, you're looking at every 2 hours. School-age children before about 4 and 7 times per day. And adults between, again, 4 and 7. And but you should be able to hold on for more or less 4 hours. Now, the one thing I just want to sort of highlight here is sometimes when I have kids coming to me, they have daytime wetting. And one of the first signs that there's actually issues with constipation is daytime wetting. And you'll be thinking, but why? Okay, and it's basically because the bladder sits in front of the bowel. So if you've got a loaded bowel full of poo, the rectum is stretched to capacity, and there might not be any symptoms from the child or any soiling, but it puts pressure on the bladder. So that bladder muscle is not allowed to stretch fully or empty, and if it's not allowed to stretch fully, over time, it doesn't work properly. And then you start getting some urinary leakage with your children. So yeah, that's how confusing constipation can be. So again, it's about knowing your business. What colour? What type is your urine? What colour is your urine? And, it really is important that the top 3 colours here, that's what we need to maintain, okay? Your first morning urine is always concentrated because that's what the body does overnight so that we don't wake up during the night to empty our bladder, okay? But during the day, we want to have very, very pale urine, okay? Concentrated urine increase the risks of urinary infections, okay? And also is the concentrated urine is the biggest cause for bladder leakage. So this is a very busy slide, but I just want to sort of talk about the nervous system, okay? And as we know, okay, the brain is in charge, all right? So we have the orange part here is our prefrontal cortex. That's the powerhouse, the computer. Okay, that's where all the executive functioning is done. And when I'm talking to children, I talk about their owl brain or their young owl brain, okay? And below that, and that's the higher center, all right, okay? And we've got the lower center, okay, which holds some of our more primitive parts of the brain, okay? And on this diagram here, there is in the brain, there's a horseshoe shape, okay, which is the hippocampus. And I call it, when I'm talking to kids, the hippocampus is the elephant brain. And the elephant brain is important for forming memories, feelings, and emotions, okay? Good feelings, bad feelings, okay? So that's what, and I call it the elephant brain, because elephants don't forget, and it's a good way to explain it to children, is to talk about the characteristics of certain animals, okay? And then we move down, as I say, further to the base, okay, right down at the bottom, is you've got your survival center, okay, which is extremely important to keep us safe from danger. And I have got my Tigger brain, okay? So the Tiggers are always on like high alert, you know, and Tigger, just like in Winnie the Pooh, I'm busy, busy, busy. I haven't got time to sit still. And I certainly don't have time to go to the toilet and empty my bladder and empty my bowels, you know. Far more important things to be doing. And a lot of our FASD FASLings are often, you know, surviving on their Tigger brain and do not engage their owl brain an awful lot, okay? And therein lies the problem, okay? So let's just see, and I'm just going to give an example, all right? Is that we have, you know, 4-year-old Peter, and he's got FASD, and he has problems with constipation, okay? And he's only passing a hard, huge log type 2 once a week, okay? And every time, okay, he builds up to passing his bowel motion, his Tigger brain is getting more and more upset and agitated and crossing his legs and running and hiding. And that's all the what we call the fight, flight, fear, and freeze response. Okay. So Peter, when Mum says, Peter, I can see Mr. Pooh needs to come out, he will lash out, he'll fight, and he will get angry at his mum for even mentioning that, okay? Because letting Mr. Pooh come out means it's going to hurt his bottom, okay? So fight, flight, a lot of kids will run away and hide behind a sofa, hide in their bedroom, go away, kind of saying to Mr. Pooh, I want you to go away, okay? So fight, flight, fear, okay? That if these kids, if the parents then plonk the child on the toilet, okay, their whole body and their face shows fear, and they literally freeze, okay? And there is no way that Mr. Pooh is going to come out. And then often what parents say is that they plopped him on the toilet and nothing happens, and then 5 minutes later, okay, they'll have done a big poop in their undies, okay? So that's what's happening. And the elephant brain is kind of working hand in hand with the Tigger brain. They're like the naughty twins, okay? And remember, okay, they're in the lower part of the brain, and they are literally blocking off the signals from the owl brain. And over time, the owl brain will just like, I might as well just go to sleep, all right? And they stop sending the signals. And then that's when the child will start having incontinence and soiling and waiting as well. Again, the looking at this autonomic, you've got the pink side, which is your sympathetic, your Tigger brain side, flight, feet, you know, and really your whole body goes into high alert. So the blood is rediverted to the essential organs. And what are the essential organs? The brain, okay, the heart, and the lungs. What are the non-essential organs? Unfortunately, it's the gut, okay, and the urinary system. So if that gets if the blood supply is reduced to them on a regular basis, they are going to start having problems and start to have issues with slowing down of bowel transit time and the bladder not stretching and squeezing as well as it should. Okay, so really, okay, and this is easier said than done, all right, is that we don't really want to poke the bear or stir the tiger all the time. We want to just try and keep them nice and calm as much as we can, okay? Thereby improving the blood supply to the gut and also the urinary system to keep that working to potential. Okay, so that is a big part, is the brain, you know, what the brain is doing and the huge impact that the brain can have. So you can kind of see how my 4Bs, brain, bowels, bladder behavior, all interlink. Okay, and if there's an imbalance in one, there's likely to be an imbalance in a few other things as well. So now we get on to tip 1. Okay, so you already know this, is know your business and know your child's business. Okay, don't just take it for granted. You know, most of these kids are what I call pit stop peers and poopers. So you've got to get them to slow down. No need to rush, and get them to check before they flush. Have the bowel, the Bristol stool chart and a urine chart up in the toilet. Our kids love visuals. Okay, and the other thing on this picture, all right, is you boys don't need to stand to wee. Get them to sit. Get them to sit, because they are more likely to relax and take their time, and as a result, completely empty their bladder. All right. And for girls, okay, and you know, is that when they're sitting, again, about taking the time, they need to be able to sit properly on the toilet, which means pants to the floor, okay, right to their ankles. And they need to spread their knees and lean slightly forward so that they are completely relaxed. So again, we'll get better emptying of the bladder. No hovering over the toilet, and no having your pants at half mast. So us parents, actually, you know, it's about keeping up, keeping going, even though they're out in nappies or pull-ups. Don't take your eye off the ball, because it can very quickly slip back again, okay, where they've got issues. Water, all right, like I showed in that one of my first slides, most of our kids are not actually drinking enough, all right? So we do really need to focus more on water. So drinking water, okay, as cupfuls, means that our bladder will fill a lot better. And remember, if it fills a lot better, we'll get a stronger signal up to the owl brain, what will then come down, and we'll have good emptying. All right, so it's all about keeping that bladder functioning to its best. Okay, so drinking water as cupfuls, not sipping. Okay, get away from that. And if our kids are not used to that, you know, then just start off with a small cup, and they've got to finish that cup. Then they'll feel that they're achieving it, and then increase the size of the cup. Having measured, having measured water bottles, okay, I have this one, and I get through 2 of them a day, and it's at set times as well. Okay, so that keeps me on track, because you get busy with work. Okay, you get busy with things, and you forget to actually drink. You can use Wobble vibrating watch alarms that can be set for every hour or every 2 hours to get the child to drink. Other tips would be include at every snack and meal, include a water-based food, okay, which could be things like you know, tomatoes, pineapple, smoothie, ice jelly, soups, you know, things that have got mainly a lot of water, 90% water content. Now, tip number 3, and I wish I'd invented this, okay? But this is what we call the squatty potty. And it was brought onto Shark Tank, the show about entrepreneurs. And it was a couple in America, and Bobby and Judy. And Judy had issues with her bowels, particularly constipation. And she was told by the doctor to squat, but the toilets are not designed for that. You know, our toilets are nice for comfort and whatnot, but we're not actually in the right position for elimination for our bowels and bladder. So she invented just something very, very straightforward, and that was, as I say, your squatty potty. Okay. And honestly, I would be without mine. Okay, it really does make a difference. Okay, so don't get rid of the footstool when your child turns 5 or 6. And maybe you don't get rid of the toilet insert either, because you don't want your kids' bums going down right into the toilet pan, because that stretches the pelvic floor too much and weakens the pelvic floor. So just think about these things. And what does the squatty potty do? Well, basically, it moves your knees up you're in a squatting position, okay? And it actually physiologically straightens out your rectum so that you can sit on the toilet in the squatting position. And because the rectum's straight, it's much easier to get all the poop out. Okay, it just makes so much sense. So, you know, it's and if you really want, you go to YouTube, all right, and you can look up the video, and it's the pooping unicorn here. Kids will love it, and it's all about the squatty potty. Okay, and I've already said, okay, try sitting. Boys, try sitting. Girls, no hovering. Okay, pants to the floor. Okay, again, okay, with our kids that have got these tiger brains, make the end of the garden safe. Bring play into the toilet. All right. Play is how the child learns. Okay, and it will help them develop a good habit of sitting, relaxing, and taking their time. But also, if they have got a bit of anxiety or a fear of the toilet, then it'll hopefully help reduce their anxiety. So again, bear in mind what your kids like. You know, they might like a nice squidgy toy. They might like a party pooper. They might like puzzles. All of these sort of things. But really, to help Mr. Pooh come out, oh dear, sorry, is blowing toys, a trumpet, whatever, because the muscles that we use for blowing are the same muscles that we use for pooping. For older children, look at things that helps them to chill out. You know, maybe a joke book or music. Try to avoid technology, okay, like your iPad or your phone. Really, because they become too passive, and they still need to do some you know, gentle pushing in some way, and they need to be focusing on, you know, I'm here to to empty my bowels or my bladder. And I would love to have a toilet like Shark Tank, or is it Shark Tale? I can't remember the name of the film now. But I do remember Dory, who was a bit dipsy, wasn't she? And didn't have a very good memory. But really, let's liven up our bathrooms, people, because most of our bathrooms are boring. They're white, they're cold looking, nothing too much to look at on the walls, bright lights, an echoey, and they might have the smell of the toilet flusher, and often our kids with FASD, do struggle with, sensory problems, and the bathroom could be a sensory nightmare for some children. And again, that's a whole hour's talk on its own, is looking at the sensory issues around toileting. So I've already mentioned about, toilet time, and that we need to look at, if our kids have got these busy brains, we have to have set toilet times where they're, prompted to sit on the toilet, and say, hey, you might not know that you need to go. Okay, you're in charge, you're the boss, you go, you tell Mr. Pooh or whatever, when he's ready to come out. So yeah, after meals. For adults, saying OMG is pushing the pelvic floor down, and it helps get the poo out as well. Hot lemon and honey drink, okay? I have one every single morning, okay? And that certainly ensures I've got nice, healthy bowels. Metamucil is really good, but don't give it if you think your child might be constipated, because it could actually make the constipation worse. But certainly, if you're worried about them not getting enough fibre, and then Metamucil, you get orange flavour, which actually tastes quite nice. Okay. Tip 6, be aware that any sort of change could have an impact on their bowels or bladder. So going on holiday is the biggest culprit, actually. Okay. I mentioned about my son going on camp for the weekend. That was enough, okay, to set the trigger brain off. And that was enough to block the messages between the brain and the bottom, for my boy. Okay. Yes, you've got to be a Sherlock Holmes. Okay. I've had a referral for a 16-year-old girl with Down syndrome, non-verbal autistic, who's regressed, but it's actually finding out what's going on is not so easy. So yes, bowel diaries and bladder charts, fluid intake output chart are really, really good, but you've got to catch them, and that in itself can be a problem. And this is something that when your kids are younger, that's when you really need to focus on, looking at healthy lifestyle, healthy diet, exercise, get them into that habit really early on, and the hope that it will continue when they become these stroppy young teenagers and adults. And yeah, I don't feel I've done so well with my lad, because he does eat a lot of sausages, and he has a lot of these energy drinks and very little fruit and veg. So, however, there's not much I can do for a 26-year-old, young man. Hard work is good for the brain, so really look at that as well. And kids yoga, there's a lot of that schools are doing more mindfulness and stretching exercises and breathing. That is all fantastic for our fastlings. Okay, so try and get them into a good routine with that early on, and that is really hopefully going to keep the brain in the blue phase, the parasympathetic phase, okay, where they're calmer rather than, you know, jumping around like Tigger. And yes, okay, don't just think it's because of their disability, okay? That if you have a gut feeling, if you have a feeling there's just something not right, okay, it's not that obvious because they're not coming across with obvious symptoms. Then, you know, look at what they're doing in the toilet and seek help. Okay, seek help early. Because the longer that the dysfunction goes on, the harder it is to actually sort. And I'm only just going to mention this, okay? And if people want more information around sensory sensitivities, and really many of our kids do have problems, and that will have a huge impact on their toileting and their bowels and bladder, then you do need to seek help from a pediatric occupational therapist. All right. There's a lot of good information on YouTube. Kelly Mayher is a pediatric OT who's a specialist in interoception, and it's really about what we've got receptors inside our body that tells us how we feel. Okay, when we're hungry, when we're sleepy, when we're thirsty, when we need to poo, when we need to wee, all of these sort of feelings. And some of our kids are haven't got you know, have got impairment with these receptors. This is a young lad that I helped over many years. And yes, he did have severe FASD with clear sentinel features. He was taken in by the auntie and the uncle, along with the 18-month-old who also had prenatal alcohol exposure. Nico had lots of tantrums. His diet was very poor fluid intake. And despite attempts by the parents, they just couldn't get him toilet trained. And he hated when they were changing his bum and cleaning his bottom. So they did come to my clinic, and this was when I worked at the hospital in Hastings. And it clearly showed he was severely constipated from the photographs. The stools were really solid type 1 pellets and very dark, and he was just having constant foul smell and leakage as well. We did admit him because the parents said that they would struggle to get the medication into him, that his behaviour was really quite dysregulated. And so, yeah, we did all that, and we just said, forget the toilet. The toilet is causing him too much stress. You know, he was freezing like the Tigger. Just keep him in pull-ups. And I followed him up long term. And certainly we did get to a point where he was no longer constipated, less tantrums, better appetite. And he was doing, you know, he was coping reasonably well at school, and he was also putting on weight. We got support in the school through high health needs funding, which the school have to apply for. And yes, the family were trying their best with toilet timing, but he still preferred to poop in his pull-ups. His toileting was improving, and yeah, the family were recommended to try and start Rubifin, but he started to lose his appetite again and lose weight, so they decided that they wouldn't continue you know, with that. But at 9 years of age, and we had sorted the constipation out, but we had not at that point been able to get him toilet trained. It is a long process, and you have to go at the child's pace. Okay. And, you know, when kids have had severe constipation, remember the elephant brain. For some of our kids, they've maybe got really shocking short-term memory, but their long-term memory banks will, for many years, be saying, hold on, because Mr. Pooh hurt your bottom. So it's not easy to break them out of that habit. So yeah, he had to remain on a small dose of laxative long term, which is perfectly safe if it's Malaxol, which is the sachets here, rather than some of the stimulant type laxative. So finally, okay, we come to the end. Okay, useful websites. So there's my website, childrenscontinence.com. Okay, so have a look on there, and don't hesitate to send an inquiry. All right. There's also the New Zealand charity, continence.org.nz, and there is the Kids Health website as well, which is fully endorsed, evidence-based, and recommended by the Paediatric Society of New Zealand. So that is all from me, and I hope that you have enjoyed listening, and I'm sure there'll be lots of other exciting information coming on the FASD website and the Facebook page. So I'll say goodbye and ngā mihi.